Welcome to the Four Wards Podcast. Hey, what's up? It's Eric Bra, voice of Draven, Jerks, and Vel'Koz. And you're listening to the Four Wards Podcast, here to help you move forward in League.
Hey guys, welcome to another Four Wards Podcast. I'm your host for the evening, Asderition. I'm joined with three awesome guys. Doom.
What's up?
Froz.
Hello.
And Mr. Alcohol himself, Haberdashing.
I should have taken that into consideration.
You chugged like 3 shots before we started.
Before we started.
I forgot, like, the camera goes up and it's like, oh, shit. This doesn't look good.
Oh my goodness, amazing.
So no one else wants shots? No?
I just,
all right.
I don't have
If
any.
you guys want to see Haber
beer.
drunk on a daily basis, go to twitch.tv/tforcepodcast and watch us live 9:30 Thursday nights.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
That's all I do.
So some news before we touch on our main topic. I know you guys don't want to spend too much time wasting time talking about your problems, Haber.
I don't have any problems.
Oh. SUPERSODE next week. If you still have anything you want to mention, we're still taking any recommendations for, what to talk about. So if you have anything you want to say, whether you're brand new to the game and you have a question, or you're a veteran and you have any recommendations, feel free to email us. You have our email right down there, I think it is, on my screen. That's at forwards@trinityforcepodcast.com. So go ahead or tweet it. Coaching, we're currently finishing up some of our first clients, I think. So if you have any questions or you want some coaching from us, feel free to also write in again at forwards@trinityforcepodcast.com. Also, The Art of Support, the book by Psuedonaut, with The Art of Mid also coming out soon, who also just had an interview. Who did the interview again, Doom?
Big Fat LP is who wrote the book,
yeah.
and then it was someone from CLG that interviewed Big Fat LP about it.
Got
Maybe
it. Well,
Travis?
I think so. But hey, CLG interviewed someone about a book. So if that's not reason enough to go check it out, then I don't know what is. But anyway, go check out Art of Support. We will have Pseudonaut on in a few days or a few weeks to talk with us about that book. Also, Optimus Poppy t-shirts. I don't have the link. I don't know where it is. What's the link?
They'll
for that?
post them in the description.
We'll post it in the description.
Yep.
Teespring is, yeah.
Teespring.com/tforcepoppy.
Okay, and that's it. And then Sheen Procs, last but not least, we're rekindling that. So look for that in the near future as well.
Well, they already posted the first episode.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, it's already out to YouTube or to the Reddit site featuring C9's High. Yeah.
Very cool. So before we jump into our main topic today, which you live viewers will know is objective control, and I mean, you'll know it if you're watching or listening, but we wanted to talk about a question that Haber answered. Haber, how about you go ahead and talk about it?
Yeah, sure. So yesterday or a couple days ago, I got a email into the Forwards email. It's from Benjamin. He was asking when is it the right time to start ranked and what his mindset should be.
Mindset? Where have I heard that before?
Yeah, so
I've never heard that before. I don't know what you're talking about.
I started writing this and I realized, this is pretty good. Like, not to toot my own horn or anything. So I just want to read my reply here. And, yeah, because it's very important to think about mindset. So, I said, if you haven't already listened, go back and listen to our first 2 episodes. They are focused specifically around mindset and League. Now, if you're asking about when to start playing ranked, I'm guessing that other people have told you one of 2 things. Either A, don't start now, wait till you have better understanding of the game with a deeper champion pool and better rune sets. Or it's B, jump in right away. You'll end up where you end up and you can climb out by playing. It's a simple philosophy question. Do you dive right into the cold waters or do you test them first? Can anyone say that one is right? Sure, they both have their advantages and disadvantages. If you wait to start, you may be too far behind by the time the season is done. If you dive in right away, you might find yourself sinking, drowning, instead of swimming. The answer comes down to the second part of your question, mindset. There are people that do well jumping in right away, and there are people that drown. It isn't a matter of how hard they tried or what their experience is prior. It all comes down to one question. Are you mentally prepared for this challenge? If you're not, it doesn't matter if you test the waters or plug your nose and jump into the deep end. You'll still end up the same way, finding yourself adrift amongst the raging torrents, trying to cling desperately for any solid purchase that you can find. Alternatively, if you go into ranked with a clear mind and expectations that the waters may be rough, but that you will weather the storm, you will put yourself out ahead and ready for any challenges that you may face. You may end your placements in bronze. You may end them in gold. All that matters is how mentally prepared you are to move forward. Yes, I did end your question with a pun. Deal with it.
Glasses.
YOLO.
I swear, I've been doing that on more and more emails, just ending it with a pun.
That made me think of Nami throughout most of that response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, why do you think I play Lux all the time? She's so damn positive, I can't get tilted.
God blessed.
I don't know. Like, it's unless she's like electric in as far as like light, then it'd be negative.
That's why I like playing Trunks.
I don't know.
It's because I can just
go
be a
back and
fucking
listen to
troll.
episode 2.
Episode 1 and 2.
One and 2. I think in episode 1 we focused a bit more on
That was mental.
like
side
what
of it, yeah.
what gets you like angry or upset, or like what makes you frustrated from your teammates' perspective. I'd say listen to both, obviously, but listen to the second episode because I think we actually spend some time talking about this very specific topic about, you know, what do I need before I hop into ranked.
Yeah, I mean, everyone is asked that question before jumping into ranked, and it's always been one of those two answers, and it depends. If the person answering it jumped right in, they'll say, oh, just jump right in, you know. But it really is more about mindset, and that's all we're going to say about it right now, I think.
Speaking of like things that you need to know, let's talk about what you need to know for objective control.
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh,
Smooth
segues.
criminal. Anyway, so objective control. Real quick, 3 questions just to kind of get people familiar with what it really is. So, what is objective control? Why is it important, and what does it really entail? Just to kick us off. So, who wants to start us out?
Okay, so objective control. This is kind of like moving your pieces around in chess. You're really looking to take the objectives in this case, which are your towers, the dragon, and baron, to ultimately get to the goal of taking down the nexus. And you have to do this in a very systematic way that's organized as much as possible so that you're able to out-rotate, outthink and outsmart your enemies, kind of get all Sun Tzu on you here. It really is. That's why the mid game is so important when it comes down to like objective control. This is when you really start to think about how to take the objectives,
when to take them, you know, how to do it, that sort of thing. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, they give you some sort of insanely good benefit. Well, maybe not insanely good, but some sort of benefit that gives you something over the enemy team. So, you know, when we're talking about objectives, like you said before, you know, dragon, baron, towers, inhibitors. But I mean, this also includes like enemy buffs. Some people consider warding as an objective, like getting deep wards. That's an objective to some people. So pretty much anything that really, you know, gives you a significant advantage over the enemy team is what we consider an objective. So we're going to talk a little bit about when to take objectives or when to think about working towards an objective. And we're going to, I think, spend the most time probably on this bit for, you know, when, what, why, how type of deal, because this can usually be the trickiest of choices. Like how is pretty easy to cover, like what it is, you know, we just kind of elaborated why exactly. But when to actually take objectives can actually be, you know, it's tough. You don't always know. So I think we should start with the biggest objective in the mid game. And I don't know if you guys disagree or agree with me, but I think dragon has to be one of the biggest objectives in the mid game.
It's one of the biggest objectives, period,
I don't wanna
throughout the game.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't want to say
It's-
the biggest.
No.
I would say it is definitely a key part of it.
I think it's the biggest personally.
It's overvalued.
I think it's
and it's undervalued. It's both. It depends because you have to look at it from the aspect that if they get the first dragon, they're already the other team is going to be more powerful than you later once they start getting items because it's a percentage buff to attack damage and ability power. But at the same time, it puts them closer to the next dragons, which are better and better buffs.
Yeah.
So it is something that pays off for you in the long term, very much. So it is very important because of that. In the short term, it doesn't pay off that much because it doesn't give you that much experience. It doesn't give you any gold. The percentage does very little with the few items you have early on. And you can get a bigger buff immediately by killing a tower and getting that gold, which buys you items now, which is going to right now make you more powerful. So I think, and we kind of touched on this a bit last week, but if you can't contest a dragon, you better be getting a tower because you still win that trade, in my opinion, if you get a tower for then, as long as you make sure you get that next dragon.
I think the key thing is that they're different. When you lose one objective versus losing another, there's always different trade-offs that you need to consider. So maybe, and I think what Doom was getting at is, if you lose one of the early dragons, it's not necessarily game over or whatever. You can still recover. But you need to keep in mind, if I'm a mid laner, especially if I'm find myself in this position all the time as somebody who plays a lot of wave clear mages. If you're a mid laner and you're playing like a squishy immobile mage and then you lose mid turret and you're up against an assassin, all of a sudden your whole zone becomes way less safe because you have to worry about every time you go to where the outer turret used to be is now a threat, and everywhere in that general area. Your jungle becomes sort of an open book to the enemy team. A lot of things happen when you start to lose objectives, and at the same sense, once you start to learn to take objectives, you can start to ramp up that pressure. And what I think we're going to spend a lot of time talking about in this episode is how it's all about being able to see what is the next step. Okay, this is where we're at. What do we need to go for next? What is my next objective?
Yeah, and it's important to start planning that out like that one step ahead of time.
Absolutely.
So like you get a kill bottom and like, oh, what do we do now? You should already have it in mind that, oh, now would be a good time to take dragon because the enemy team can't contest it. And you always need to be thinking that step ahead.
Yeah.
Just as a role plug sort of thing, when you're a jungler, this is probably the time that you are the most important in the game.
Absolutely.
And especially if you want to help lead your team towards winning, especially if you're in solo queue and stuff, this is the time when you really need to establish vision and start pinging and communicating with your team. Hey, let's go do this. Hey, let's do this. Hey, let's do this. And really start getting those mid-game power spikes and objectives, because that's where a jungler is strongest, is when you have vision control, you have objectives, and that's what you do is you take the objectives because you have Smite.
Yeah.
So you are the best person for taking objectives.
Yeah,
So.
and then on the flip side of that, like if you kill the jungler, the enemy jungler, you just took away all of that power. That is like the perfect time to go for a big objective like dragon or an enemy buff. Like if you take out the jungler, that is like, for me at least as a player, that's the biggest green flag to go to dragon I think I'll ever get. Like no player will tell me when to take dragon easier than if they kill the jungler. So kill on the jungler, I would say, is a pretty good indicator for taking dragon as well.
One thing I really want to touch on here that we're all sort of scratching the surface of is that you really have to be really careful about taking advantage whenever you force an advantage. So we talked about, like, if I kill somebody, then I want to go for an objective. If you get into the habit of like, okay, I outfarm my opponents and I get a good KDA, but I can't seem to carry. I think I'm stuck in wherever I am. What you might be doing is you might be getting kills, you might be getting farm, but then maybe you're just recalling after you get those kills, or maybe you're not going to the right place. Every time you get pressure on the map, whether it be from kills, whether it be from forcing recalls, it's about seizing the opportunity to get an objective because of the pressure that you created, not just the pressure of killing somebody or forcing them to recall.
And then, you know, from a jungler perspective, you know, asking yourself when you should take dragon. If you think you can, like, for you, maybe more veteran players thinking about taking dragon solo, you know, you've heard of people taking it by themselves. I got to say the first thing to do before you decide to take dragon solo is ward and counter ward. Make sure you're getting rid of vision so that you're not going to take this dragon completely, like, so they know you're on it type of deal.
Yep.
And on that note, Scuttle Crab is absolutely huge when taking dragon by yourself, because Scuttle,
that is wonderful.
If you can, like, say they catch you, that little bit of movement speed to help you get out of that, or to help you maybe follow up with a gank after you get dragon, is huge. Absolutely huge. Like, I can't tell you how many times, like, Scuttle has saved my life because of in a dragon fight, because, you know, I got caught and I needed to flash out and run away type of deal. That movement speed is massive. And
I think I need to make a correction here. I may have said earlier in other episodes that the scuttler lasts for 1.5 minutes. It lasts for 75 seconds. And its respawn is every 3 minutes. From the point that you kill it.
Yeah, good clarification.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's dragon. You know, when to do it, you got to look for your advantage. You know, bot lane, you're going to notice this is most predominantly going to happen if you find a kill on some of your enemy laners or on the jungler. Maybe you pushed them out of lane and your jungler is in your bot side area. You should look to try and take it. Again, don't try and take it alone, like just support an ADC. Make sure your jungler's there. Always make sure your jungler is there to try and take that first, at least that first dragon.
And sometimes it's not just what your champion is capable of. So we talked about, you know, getting the dragon, getting the vision control and things like that. But a lot of times the objective you need to go for is what your team is capable of.
Yeah.
If you have if your team gets an advantage, even if it's not you on the bot side of the map, that makes going for a dragon easier. If you have teammates that are off in top lane, it's going to be harder to force objectives on the other side of the map. You kind of have to coordinate and find your place on the map and say, okay, we could realistically go for this here. One really common thing that I see really often is if you find yourself in a situation where you originally wanted to siege maybe an inner turret and you just realize it's not going to happen, they have too much wave clear, but if you check the timers and see the dragons coming up, you force them into their base, and you can say, okay, as we retreat, maybe we can head in this direction because that's where our team is able to reach.
Definitely. So, you know, moving on from dragon, you know, kind of pushing into, you know, Baron, talking about, like, when we're on the opposite side of the map, you know, and maybe... You know, maybe dragon is up and you're just too far for it, and, you know, potentially Baron could be the possible objective that you want to take. And we don't want to push you into trying to take dragon or Baron too early. You know, we were talking about this before the show. You know, Baron is I think we've all come to a semi conclusion that it is a late mid to late game kind of objective.
Yeah, with barring exception of like a few champions like Nunu, it really is reserved for later on in the game.
If you have the damage and you're ahead enough, you can maybe get away with it. But this is the kind of objective that you're looking for, like multiple kills. You know, kills that you're really probably not going to find too frequently in the first 15-20 minutes of the game. So of course this is going to be a later type thing when people are grouping and stuff. So, you know, kills on at least 3 or more, jungler, ADC, anyone that has the potential to lay down damage to try and steal it is when you're really looking to try and take Baron. But again, you know, making sure that it's late enough to where you can actually DPS it down because he's tanky
Yeah.
Right.
motherfucker. He's
And
tough.
it's
Yeah.
a high risk play,
Yes,
especially
absolutely.
the earlier on you do it. If the death timers are really not that long, and you may think because of the results of a team fight, okay, let's go get Baron, and then you go fight that thing, and it takes you forever to do it, and then the enemy team shows up and aces you. You really have to be very smart about looking at how good is my team at taking the Baron, and that's why we generally think of it as more of a late game. But there are exceptions. Haberdashing mentioned Nunu, but there's several others that are just very good at doing it earlier on.
Yeah, definitely.
And I mean, you got to be sure that the buff you're getting out of it is worth it. You may have like a time where you don't have a problem taking the other objectives, the other turrets on the map. That's not necessarily a time that you're really going to need Baron. Baron, the way it is right now with the buff, it's good for ending sieges in your favor. It allows you to sort of crack that shell that is the inner turrets and the inhibitor turrets, because it gives you those empowered minions. It gives you extra damage to towers, I believe, still.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's really meant to accelerate the game when you've kind of stalled out and you don't know what to do.
That's
next
really
with your
good.
lead.
Last week we mentioned the whole ARAM mid situation that sometimes happens in the mid game, and it sounds like Haber, you're starting to touch on this about like ways we can deal with that situation when we just can't push into the enemy anymore.
Yeah, I mean that's not exactly when the mid shuffle happens, but yeah, definitely later on in the game when you just can't seem to breach that next line of turrets, and it does happen. Like you go up there and you'll keep losing team fights. It's time to start changing your playstyle. It's time to look on doing something else on the map.
And Baron is the perfect solution for that. He's so siege orientated. It's just
Yeah,
I mean, this
given that you have the advantages to actually do him.
Yeah, speaking of sieging,
Kill him.
Yes, actually kill him. Don't let. Oh my goodness.
Don't do him.
Speaking of, like, I had a couple games like yesterday where my jungler was missing Smite on Baron and Dragon every time, and I feel like we kind of need to touch on this. We kind of sort of touched on it, I feel like, last week on mid game, talking about making sure you know how to smite as a jungler. This is really important when taking these objectives. Not so much when, but like it's just important. Knowing how to smite and knowing when to smite it's important. So for you jungle mains out there, practice your smite. Learn how to use it.
Yeah, it's not so much. Well, I'll let you.
Oh, I was just gonna say, learning how to use your smite effectively is just as important as a laner learning how to last hit. So it is just as important as last hitting. So use your smite, learn it, and the only way you're gonna learn to use it is to jungle, play.
When it comes down to using Smite on these objectives, it's not only about knowing how much your Smite does, it's knowing when the damage is going to come in from the rest of your team, so you can get an idea of when you need to Smite. Because chances are, by the time like you need to Smite, if that's when you're realizing you need to Smite, it's too late. You need to be saying like, oh, okay, my other team members are going to be throwing out these skills to burst it down at this time. So you need to preemptively, think of that.
A big mistake with a lot of lower level players that play junglers that are very good at doing things like Dragon and Baron is that they get into this mindset of, oh, I'll just go here and solo it. And I know Asderition mentioned the importance of counter vision and how huge that is. But another thing about whenever you're going for a risky play that you're pretty much basing off of, okay, my jungler can do this objective really well. You have to keep in mind, it doesn't matter how much damage you do to the. It only matters who gets the last hit on Dragon or Baron.
Yeah.
So if somebody comes in and your team is all low and then they kill it, it doesn't matter if you did 3/4 of the Dragon's health damage. It matters who got that last piece of it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And, Nadio13 from the chat just, chimed in saying check smite damage before taking an objective like Dragon or Baron. I mean, this is exactly what Froz is talking about. Like, if you're as a jungler don't know how to use that smite and don't time it right, and you may do all the damage, but you just don't catch it at that last second. It's probably it might be because you don't know how much damage smite actually does. So check to see how much damage it does.
Here's the beautiful thing as compared to how it used to be is that there's a little indicator on your screen that says how much your smite damage your smite does.
Over smite, the ability.
Over smite. So look at that because that makes a difference. Now, like on smaller things you can't tell as well, but on Dragon, Baron, red buff, and blue buff, you can see exactly how much health they have. So, work on that, and then eventually you kind of get to the point where you don't have to look at the number, but you see the percentage of the bar and you can just boom. So the more you do that, the more you work on that, you'll start to see exactly how much it takes. So.
Yeah, speaking of like anti-siege type of deals like Baron and stuff, we should probably talk about how to take and when to take turrets.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So it kind of going along with Baron and trying to get an advantage. If you're having a hard time, let's say getting the inner turrets, you need to realize where the enemy team is spending their resources, because they have 5 players, and if they're putting them in the wrong spot, that leaves an opportunity for you to be taking an objective elsewhere. So say like you have one person pushing top, and you realize there were 3 people in mid, they're now gone, and at last I saw them heading towards top. Chances are they are going to stop that one person. So now you have an opportunity to say, hey, while they're distracted, let's try to get mid, let's try to get bottom. Because even if that guy dies, if you get a turret out of it, that's still worth in your favor.
Oh yeah, I mean 500.
Totally.
What is it? 150 per turret globally.
Mm-hmm.
So 600. 600. My math is terrible. 750. 750 gold globally, as opposed to the 300 that you gave up for just that one kill. Like, way worth.
Absolutely. Make sure you type worth in chat.
Yeah. In all chat. Make sure it's in all chat.
If you hear that term rotations, it's used a lot to describe competitive plays. But in a solo queue fashion, really the idea is, you want to outmaneuver as a team the opposing team. Just like Haber was talking about, if they're sending people top, that means they're not in another location. So if you work with your team to say, okay, let's get mid while they go top, and you outmaneuver them or out-rotate them, then you can punish and get objectives just by using a numbers advantage in a lot of situations.
OGN rotation.
Yep, rotatos.
Yeah.
Ward 'em, gank 'em, take the towers till you're through.
Also, to extend on this, some of this has to do with
shake your head, Asderition.
The specific team composition that you have. Last week we talked about split pushing, and also we talked about sieging probably being one of the most basic ways to try and get a turret. But there's other ways to try and get objectives, and you might be thinking to yourself, okay, I'm an assassin, I don't really siege. What do I do to get turrets?
Poke comp.
With an assassin? Yeah.
Oh, you said assassin.
Yeah, we said assassin.
I didn't hear you say assassin.
So if I'm an assassin, how do I try and get objectives? That's what I'm asking here.
I find picks.
Yeah, you gotta play completely different. You have to get picks.
Yeah, it's not about just standing around in a turret trying to wait until that next minion wave. You need to be warding, first of all. That's the most important part. And you need to be waiting to see an enemy out of position. And then as soon as that happens, since you're an assassin, your main job is to kill them as quickly as possible. If they're now down a man, you can apply more pressure around the map that they can theoretically deal with. It puts you in an advantage no matter where you go at that point.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's... Because honestly, like the big assassins, your LeBlanc, Zed, Talon,
Fizz is pretty. He's getting strong now too.
Katarina,
Diana,
Akali.
Akali's she sucks. You don't even need to mention her.
Yeah.
She's so bad right now.
The point stands that they're not good at taking turrets unless they have a big advantage by killing someone else on the enemy team to start it off.
Yeah.
Just to give an example here, like if I know we've mentioned Lux on a lot of episodes, a Lux is really good at holding off waves, and a lot of champions like these are really good at holding off waves to the point where you're not going to be able to get mid turret while this champion is by the objective, because
hell no.
waves are just going to disappear left and right. As an assassin, it's just not going to work out.
And if you get anywhere close to my turret, I'm killing you. So whatever.
But if
be that confident.
As Haber mentioned with the warding, if you're able to get this Lux or other champion away from the turret and caught out in the open, then you have an opportunity to capitalize. And once that champion's dead, it's a hell of a lot easier to get mid-turret.
Yes, it is.
True.
Which is why you buy a Zhonya's, Lux players. Don't get killed by that Zed. You're not trying to lose that turret.
Very true.
You're like that drunk uncle that never shuts out.
The drunkle.
To be fair, I did kind of instigate it.
Yeah, what the
Drunkle
hell?
Lux.
He totally brought...
Well, you're that
Jungle
jerk
Lux,
that starts it up at the table.
Whatever.
Because he's gonna keep
because I said
it.
pass the mashed potatoes and you want to talk about whatever I love? What? I say something and then you're like, oh, it must be Lux.
Because it always is with you. It doesn't fucking
There's
matter.
always a Lux angle.
Hey, it was sunny out today. That's because Lux made sunshine.
No, Lux bends light. She can't make sunshine.
Oh, fuck
That's
you.
Leona. Duh.
Oh my god.
I'm gonna
Okay, let's move on to the next objective here. So we're talking inhibitors.
Yeah, inhibitor. Inhibitor. This is a tricky one because a lot of people. We're gonna touch on this. I think we all agreed in a later episode we're gonna talk about the inhibitor versus Baron conversation that so many people struggle to really comprehend. But in short, inhibitor. When to take an inhibitor? Usually after you take an inhibitor turret, you have to assess whether or not it is safe. And I mean every single time you take an inhibitor turret. Like if you take one, hold tab and see whether or not the enemy team is going to be up before you can kill that inhibitor turret. Because if you've already taken the inhibitor, that probably inhibitor turret, that probably means that you've taken out a decent amount of their team. I don't know how much, it could be anything from like 2 to our whole team. So you have no idea, but assess whether or not that they're going to be up before you can take the inhibitor. If they are, do not try and take it. And if they aren't, then yeah, you can try and take it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's all about, you got an advantage by taking that inhibitor turret.
Capitalize on it.
If you throw it away then by dying when they come back up, you've now negated that lead again. It's better to start taking small leads when you can. But yeah, like if you take in the inhibitor turret and there's still 20 seconds, even 10 seconds with like 3 people on your team that are attacking the inhibitor, you should be able to get it and get out. But if they're all respawning within 5 seconds and you're now just getting out to the inhibitor, maybe you want to back out unless you have like an 80 carry and like Fiora.
I gotta stress this here. Press the tab button.
Please.
The tab button is amazing. It tells you all these death timers that we're talking about, and it tells you timers for when objectives are coming. Like if there's one thing you want to just incorporate into your play after listening to this show and like how to like start prioritizing objectives and like seeing when you can or can't take an objective, like hit that button. It's really good.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It
is.
Really, really is. I feel like Doom, you had something you wanted to say.
Really, I mean, anytime you need any information, hit the tab button because the tab button gives you so much information. It gives you timers, it gives you objective times, it gives you deaths, builds, everything. I think everyone really overlooks the value of the tab button, you know, because it gives you so much information. So if you need any information, just hit tab.
It probably has it.
So going back to the inhibitor stuff, the inhibitor is really important because of what it does for your team. When you take down that inhibitor, it's buffing your minions by giving you an extra super minion.
Yeah, it also makes minions more
have,
durable as well.
Yeah.
It increases their health.
So it's instead of having one of your own champions pushing a lane, that lane that the inhibitor's down, it will push to the enemy nexus by itself if left unchecked.
Yeah, it's pretty terrifying actually. As a
within
mid-main,
2 waves taking down that bottom turret, it will take down a nexus turret.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, and especially as like a mid main, I hate supers because they're flipping hard to kill for one thing.
Yeah.
And they're just
it's easier
like,
as an AD carry,
they
but yeah.
hurt a lot.
They do.
Holy shit. I mean, I've died to supers. Like, I'm not proud of it, but I have.
Yeah, I mean, like at like 20
Who
minutes,
hasn't?
I think, getting an inhibitor, those super minions will have like over 200 attack damage or something like that.
You want to find an easy way to win? Take an inhibitor. That's a real easy way to get a good hold of the game.
I mean, like people talk like the death sentence in League is having 3 inhibitors down. There's almost ever no coming back from that.
Yeah, and there's something to note about after you take your second inhibitor. You know, you have one inhibitor and then you take a second inhibitor. I think they still get increased like damage and stuff when there's 2 inhibitors down, if I'm correct.
Yes.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, when you have if you take 2 inhibitors, your minions become even stronger. Like, and you spawn 2 supers per wave rather than just 1.
2, yes.
At 3. At 3.
At 3?
Down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no,
I knew it was
it's
like 2 or 3.
it's
couldn't
when all
remember.
inhibitors
The main
are down.
point is what Haber first said, is that it enables you to push a wave without sending anyone over in that direction. And since we've talked about what do I do next and where do I want to go with my team, it makes it much easier to pressure objectives elsewhere on the map when you're automatically pressuring the lane where the super minions are going.
And, you know, speaking of this, Nadio, again, talking about Banner of Command, and actually I was listening to T-Force Proper yesterday, and Pone was talking about Banner of Command. Pone actually loves this item, and he thinks it's one of the best items for supports. He actually, if he thinks he's going to have a 4v5, like a 4v5, he's going to rush that. Like Banner of Command along with a super minion, whew.
If you're honestly, if you want to take objectives, Banner of Command is like it. And if you're a tank jungler, I love Banner of Command, especially if you're facing like a double AP comp. You want Banner of Command simply because it's going to allow you to just slaughter down a wave without having to actually be there. It's wonderful.
That's the key point. Don't be there. Like, I see way too many people waste time being in a wave that's going to push itself. Like, your resources are best used elsewhere on the map. If you have a super in a wave, it's going to push. Don't be in that wave. Please, I will get mad. Don't be in that wave.
Think of it like all the as seen on TV commercials. Just set it and forget it.
Yeah.
You know, buff your Banner of Command minion and walk away and just let it do its thing. Pressure another lane or pressure an objective, because what you do is that you force that advantage by saying, okay, you either have to deal with this buffed minion or this super minion or this wave, or you can deal with me. You're going to lose a tower, or you're going to lose an objective. So make them pay for it. Always make your enemy pay for it.
Yeah, there's 3 lanes in League of Legends, and if you can have at least one of them with supers in it, then you only really need to concentrate on the other 2 lanes and then the other objectives like Dragon and Baron and whatnot. It makes it a lot easier because you're automatically creating pressure. And they can't just ignore that wave or else they'll lose Nexus turrets, as we talked about before.
So let's cover how to take objectives real quick. I think specifically we talked already about Dragon, so I don't really think we need to touch too much about Dragon. So junglers, know your Smite, and everybody in their respective roles, make sure you know where to be when you're taking Dragon. Again, if you don't know where that is, please go ahead and listen to our last episode. We talked about it quite a lot. So let's talk about taking towers, because I feel like we kind of ignored the fact we talked about taking towers and when to take towers, you know, being ahead or even, but how do we work on towers or other objectives when we're behind? This can be a little bit trickier.
It is a little bit trickier
because objectives win games. So when we're behind, we have to find some way.
And
if you're behind, the best thing to do is establish vision safely. You have to get that vision. You have to get it safely. So remember, like we were saying earlier, you don't have to necessarily put all the damage on the objective. You have to get the last hit on it. So if you can go challenge for an objective and you can steal it by getting a well-timed smite or getting a good team fight where you can kill the enemy and then just, take it at the end, that's what you want to do. You have to make the enemy fight for it and choose, are they going to fight you or are they going to get that objective? So.
Let's try and keep it on turrets for now, because I feel like every time we talk about turrets, the dragon just claws us back, and we and I think Asderition brings up a good question. How do we actually get turrets, especially when we're behind?
I mean, there's a couple different behinds. There's the behind because you lost a few team fights, and then there's behind all 3 lanes lost. Probably not going to be able to come back. That's sort of behind. But in the kind of behind where, say 1 lane lost, even 2 lanes lost, and you just lost a couple team fights, that's the time where you have to evaluate what's good with your team. I played a game just today. I was playing Jungle Nunu, and it's because God, he's like an instant win right now.
I had
it's ridiculous.
I had a 100% win rate with him for it wasn't that many games, but I would look at their team comp and be like, this is a perfect Nunu comp, and you just throw in a Nunu on top of someone like a Kate or a Vayne, and you just roll.
Anyways, back to what made this good is that we were all going up against 3 AD champions. There was an AD top laner, an AD jungler, an AD mid laner, and an AD carry. So obviously, they won their laning phase pretty well in the mid lane and in the top lane. Our Ori went 0-8, I think, in laning phase against Yasuo. Yeah, it was not good. But so there was obviously no way that we could fight them straight on. And I told them that, just wait, don't try to engage, let them take the turrets that they want right now. All we have to do is wait, get stack armor, and then we can start winning. It's really just a factor of time and waiting for those power spikes. If you are that team that has Trinity Force champions or really heavy team fight champions, you have to be starting to group up and pressuring those objectives together. On the other hand, if you have a split pusher, you work with that strategy. It's all about, understanding, because even if you did get behind in lane, that gets kind of erased if you're playing to your team's potential.
Yeah, and make sure, sorry, Doom, one sec. Make sure you're staying positive throughout the entire course of this, because playing from behind can be very, very frustrating. We all have been, we all know how it feels, so make sure you keep a positive outlook when you're going into this. Okay, Doom, go ahead.
I was just going to say, also, when you're playing from behind, you have to look at the strength of your team, and if your team is a late game team that scales better, stall that game out as long as possible, because you have a better chance of winning if you hit those late game power spikes. If you have a tank that just gets unkillable, or you get that AP carry or that AD carry or that AP carry that just snowballs out of control to stupid damage, hold that game off. Just work on clearing lanes. And once again, just to throw it in there, objective control, lane control, everything, one of the best items right now is Banner of Command, because it lets you stretch out a game, because you automatically start pushing lanes without having to be there. So
it's so weird that item is good. It's been how many years that item has just kind of sat there sitting all shitty?
Yeah,
it's weird that
it's the newest iteration. What's the newest iteration of it now? Before last season, you could take it on Zyra and make it work.
Burning Bush, Zyra.
I think I want to bring up when it comes to playing from behind, we talked about the numbers game before, and that's still very true. The enemy team might have beaten you in lane for the most part, but that doesn't usually mean that they can win a 2v4 around a turret, or that doesn't mean that they can't still get caught out if you group up and they don't. if you are able to out rotate and out vision control your opponents,
Yeah,
and
no,
you
vision
can
is
turn around
central.
games.
Like every battle arena that we do, I try to bring out the point. Okay, from where we are in the game right now, what does this winning team, the blue team, need to do to keep winning, and what does the red team need to do to turn it around?
Right.
And every time it comes down to,
wards.
well, they need to ward up and try to find an opportunity to pick someone off, because that's the easiest identifiable way to turn a game around.
So, taking a tower when you're behind, we're going to recommend things like Banner of Command, building the right way, making sure that you're grouped up. But, ultimately, I think the best way to play and get objectives from behind, I think we all agree on this, is literally just ward and be patient, because it will come. Your time, your opportunity, it will come. You just, you're behind and you recognize that your best bet is to not get any more behind.
Yeah.
And do your best to try and find the right opportunity, because that is what you can play off of, capitalizing on
You really
mistakes.
want to pump their brakes as much as possible.
Absolutely.
So if you're losing team fights, don't get into those team fights. Even if you're trying to defend around a turret, maybe you just need to back off, let them get the turret. Yes, they're getting a gold advantage, but not as much as they could have been getting. And
Correct.
as long as you're tapering that off,
Mitigation.
eventually you'll hit your power spikes where you can come back.
You generally want to take fights where you have a clear advantage, because if since you're behind, if you do a straight up team fight, unless you have some much better team fighting team or something, you're probably gonna lose, and there's gonna be a lot of negative consequences as a result of that. But whenever you win that numbers game, or maybe the enemy team gets cocky and they try and turret dive, that's your chance to turn it around.
Or you find someone alone, people split pushing because they think that because you're 12-2, you think you can just fight whoever you want, sort of deal. You just you bank on their arrogance, and oftentimes that's what's the downfall. You look at how many times people come back from a game, it's not because they did something spectacular, it's because the other team threw, honestly. And the right team just capitalized. And there's a thing I thought of while Haber was talking earlier about capitalizing on say a mistake. So I've seen a lot of times where we'll be behind, and Froz talking about, not team, or Haber was talking about not team fighting, but when you can't team fight, this is especially true after you get a kill. Just because you killed somebody doesn't mean you're now magically able to team fight. I have seen so many teams lose because they'll kill someone and be like, oh shit, it's now a 4v5, we should engage, but they're still 2k gold ahead of you. You don't, just because you have the number advantage does not mean that you actually have the advantage. So you really got to pay attention to those sorts of things too.
Yeah, a perceived advantage can be just as good or just as bad as an actual advantage. Thinking that you have an advantage and having that, making sure that you just go in and levy the advantage that you at least think you have, sometimes can work out in your favor just by have that confidence, that mindset that, okay, we can do this. But at the same time, it can work in your error if you get too cocky about it. So
we said this last week, be decisive. If you're behind, especially, the window where you're going to be able to take a fight and actually win is going to be very narrow. And if you're playing an initiating champion, even if you're playing like an Annie with the Tibber stun, that, if you find that right perfect moment to catch them, that can turn everything around. But it's on you to be decisive in that moment and say, all right, guys, let's do this, and then make wonderful things happen.
Jenkins.
Sorry, just that.
Oh shit, he's
I
going
had
in.
to.
Basically
God.
the opposite of
Oh no. God
But
damn
that
it,
does
Leroy.
happen. People think, okay, we got to do something, and then they'll flash Tibber stun, and their team is still miles behind.
Don't do that. Don't
yeah,
be, I you were talking about Orianna, and Amumu players instantly come to mind for this. Amumu a bandage toss, and I'll sombrero and be like, all right, that was my fault, but honestly, dude, you were way too far. What are you doing?
Yeah.
I sombreroed, yes, but still, you're in the back line. I need you over here, buddy. And Go ahead.
Over engaging, I honestly can say, is one of my biggest downfalls, and it's something that when you're a champ, especially a tanky champ or like a heavy engage champ, like a lot of junglers in the meta are right now, knowing when to engage and how hard to engage makes all the difference. And that can be the difference. You have to remember too, it can be the difference between getting an objective or not getting objective. If you win a team fight, that can net you an objective. If you lose a team fight, that can net the other team an objective. So, team fights are very closely related to objectives and objectives to team fights, because usually any smart team, when they win a team fight, is going to go get an objective. And, if you lose one, you can assume you're going to lose an objective as well.
Yeah, I think we got to start wrapping this up here. And I think if one thing has been clear about our whole mid lane discussion last week and this week, it's that there's a lot involved in it. It's not very clear cut as well.
Yeah.
The tips that we're giving you right here are beginner points. It really takes a lot of time to figure out what you need to be doing in the game.
So before we jump into listener questions, because we are wrapping this up, I was reading a really long article on Reddit about how to carry in solo queue. I don't know if you guys saw that, but one of the big ones that he mentioned was making sure that Baron is warded when it spawns. And I felt like this is an awesome one because, we push wards all the time. We're 4 wards, that whole thing. This is a really good habit to get into because, early on, you may not think that, Baron's warded, they're not going to take Baron, but you're going to grow and become more strong of a player. And eventually you'll get to that point where warding Baron at 15 minutes is actually exactly what you need to do. So establishing that habit early, it gives you vision of the river, which is awesome. And at 15 minutes, that could be huge. A jungler is going to walk through that, guaranteed. There's no way he's not going to walk through there. So, ward that Baron at 15 minutes, make it a
20
habit.
minutes.
Or, I'm sorry, why did I keep 15 with the shit? It used to be 15, I'm sorry. But at 20 minutes, and you're going to find that it just will ultimately lead to, better outcomes as well.
Yeah, speaking of stats for Baron, he has 300 movement speed.
Really?
Yes. Just the more you know.
He just doesn't feel like moving.
Oh my God! Imagine if he could move.
He would,
dude. That would be terrifying. New.
He chases you down the river.
Rito, please.
God.
New game mode, moving objectives, and they fight you if they see you. That'd be amazing.
Let's move into listener questions here.
All right, listener questions. One from Ashura. Hi, I'm a mid-main who started League in mid-season 4, and since I directly jumped in the community and watched a ton of guides and watched a ton of LCS games. I watch streams, but every single time I play in ranked, I don't know how to carry my team by myself. He says solo carry my team. The thing I want to say here is that even with all the things I already know about the game, I'm still stuck in Bronze 2. I can't seem to win games, and I can't win games. Sorry, English is a second language, so it's a little flustering. But what can I do to fix this? So he has a general understanding of the game. Why doesn't he find so much success?
Okay.
This is a tough one. And
there's something that, and I'm glad somebody wrote in about this because this used to be a bit of a pet peeve of mine. There's a lot of people get caught up on forums and stuff about what leagues people are in and things like that before they look at someone's advice and things like that. And while maybe some people are a bit critical when they see a lower level player post something, there is something to that in that it's one thing to theory craft about the game and it's one thing to apply it to your own play. And reading this question leads me to believe that you are very familiar with the game, on what the pros like to do, what does it mean by some of the topics we talked about here. But it doesn't mean that much if you can't CS well, if you can't trade well, if you can't actually implement, okay, I need to go for this objective here, and actually make it happen in game. And there's really no substitute for practice at the end of the day.
No.
Yeah, it's definitely true. I mean, I responded to you saying knowledge isn't skill, so just because you know a whole lot about the game doesn't necessarily mean you have the mechanics and the skill to follow through with that knowledge. Knowledge is only half the battle if you can only put forth what you know at a certain level. So like Frost said, lots of practice, and putting your in like the information that you've gathered to effect. Like, I'm sure you watch a bunch of games and you keep track of like all sorts of things, but like when it comes down to it, LCS players, we're not LCS players. I couldn't even contend with an LCS player. I'd get shat on like instantly,
Every day.
despite my entire like vast knowledge and time with this game. Like, it's not about how much I know. It isn't. It's about how much time and how much I play this game and my skill level. And that's what you need to look at. Not what you know, but how skilled you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if you're not totally sure, like, a lot of people just have trouble, like, finding out what's wrong with their games. They're to that point where they just can't pinpoint what's going wrong in their games. And that's a good point to, like, have someone else look at your games via like replays or just spectating, just to get an idea. And we'd be more than happy to do that too.
Yeah. But please send us replays, and and once again, coming back to it, I can tell you, like myself, I can tell you when I look at my replays, you have to learn how to look at your own replays. And a lot of times you can do that by looking at other people's replays. But a lot of times I'll look at a replay, and usually the two top things I pick on my replays are, I over-engaged, or I over-committed, or I positioned badly. Mm-hmm. And those are but you want to pick out those key things that are a running theme. And the big things that are running theme are the ones you want to focus on first, and then go from there. And it can be everything. It could be positioning, it could be last hitting, it can be transitioning in a mid game. There's so many aspects to work on, but really look at your replays, find one, work on that, go from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of this ties into the mindset discussion we had in our early episodes, but really being able to look at your own play and critically analyze, okay, I did this, I should have done this, or I could have done this better, and then apply that constantly when looking at your play and saying, okay, I could have been doing this. This is a new goal I'm going to work towards. That's how you improve at the game. And it takes a while. You can't, just because you know a lot about the game doesn't mean you can go from bronze to gold overnight. It's going to take a lot of games to do it.
Absolutely, like tons of games. So yeah, focus on your find a weakness, hone in on it, and try and work on it, and then follow up with another one. Find a strength that you have. You seem to watch a lot of the LCS and follow a lot of games. That's an advantage that that other people don't have. Maybe they don't have time, or they just don't know about it. Using that is also a pretty good advantage, because you'll know like what items are good on champions. You'll probably have a good understanding of what to build. Make sure you're using the things that you have in your game, because just knowing it isn't the same thing as actually using it. Anything else you guys want to touch on for this question?
I think that's it.
All right,
that's pretty good.
So Nathaniel writes in saying, I'm currently in Bronze 2. I main support and ADC, and I found that skill will vary with people on champions. When I'm 4th and 5th pick and able to get support or ADC, I find the enemy team will picked both or at least one by that point, as in they picked a support or an ADC. I mainly play Caitlyn, Jinx, Leona, Janna, but my question is, picking into a counter at this elo, does it matter, or should I avoid doing it and play a champion I'm not as skilled with to avoid the counter? I've had games picking into the counter. I have one lane, and others that countered forces me to lose lane. Any tips and suggestions would be great.
We've talked about this before.
Multiple times, in fact.
Yeah, and I think the answer has kind of been, it's better to play what you know rather than playing something that you're not comfortable on. This is especially true in the bottom lane, because counter picks really don't exist that much. Because it's a 2v2, it's really more skill dependent. Even in like matchups that they say like, oh, Graves is supposed to win against Ezreal 9 times out of 10. Yeah, that's not like an accurate number, but even then, it's really more dependent on your synergy as a bot duo, especially AD carries in general because they're so item dependent.
Yeah,
It's not a huge
like this is like we said, we've talked about this before. And you can ask any one of us, and whether or not like someone counters somebody, I will always say that I'm gonna pick probably another champion, whether or not I feel like it. Like I know for a fact in the mid lane, I don't care if people say that Zed counters Lux. I'm gonna pick Lux anyway because I know how to play against that champion. And this is a topic that we talked about before, but learning how to play against a champion doesn't, like, just because they say, oh, they're stronger than you, or oh, they counter you, doesn't necessarily mean that that's the case. You just need to adapt your play style to better fight this person, because if you play it a specific way, you will probably lose. But if you play to the enemy's disadvantages or their advantages, then you can find a way to get around what they call the counter. For example, I'm assuming Graves counters Ezreal because Graves can all-in ridiculously well, blind you, and then walk away like nothing happened while also being really tanky. And Ezreal kind of struggles with hard all-ins, especially if if the enemy support is on him and he can't E fast enough. But if you preemptively know that Graves is going to want to do something like that, you can easily E away as if nothing was going to happen and watch him blow his cooldowns like the dumbass he is. It's just adapting to what the enemy is doing.
And you mentioned Caitlyn. Caitlyn is just such a fantastic AD carry in the laning phase.
If you're picking
so
Caitlyn,
safe.
you shouldn't lose lane.
There's you can play around your champion's strengths versus the enemy champion's strengths. Like if you play a Caitlyn versus a Graves, you have to worry about more all-in potential than a Kog'Maw or something. But no matter what, if you say, okay, I've got my Caitlyn's range, I can use my net to get back, I can set up traps, like as long as you adapt your play style, like if you are comfortable with the champion, it's always going to be more important, especially in the long term, than I'm going to pick this counter pick. And the main thing, I don't want to beat this to death, but the one sentence that really kind of got under my skin when I first read this, and I told this to Nathaniel when I replied to him. He says, I've had games picking into the counter, I have one lane, and others, the counter forces me to lose the lane. If there is no situation in which the counter forces you to lose the lane. If you lost the lane, it's probably because of the way you played the lane, not just because they chose champion A and you chose champion B.
Yeah, mindset has a lot to do there, and if you perceive that you've lost a lane going into it, you have lost the lane. Because you've decided that you lost the lane. And if you are worried about a matchup, communicate in solo queue. Just, type in chat to your support. Hey, I'm worried about this matchup, so I'm going to play a bit passive and firm. If you can make plays or just kind of lead me, do it. Or if you say, hey, I'm going to play passively, jungle, can you just gank here as soon as you possibly can? A lot of times they're going to be very receptive to it.
Yeah, especially if you ask for help. And you do it in a kind way. Like, don't be like, oh, jungler never comes bot or something like that. Be like, hey.
I had to bring that up too.
Like, you got to be like, hey, buddy, you mind, swinging by bot on your next, trip to bot side jungle? Like, just be nice about it. Be polite, Would you totally, diss a stranger on the street? Like, no. You're not going to do that.
You're all on the same team, but at the same time, the jungler isn't there to win the lane for you. If you're in a bad matchup, you have to play it smart. And we talked about this too in a previous episode. So I really just want to say, counter picks aren't as scary as they seem. We've talked this topic to death. I'm sure we'll talk about it more in the future.
Yeah.
But it's really, comfort picks are more important than what counters what.
Yeah. So Allie writes in, I don't know. I think it's Allie. Whatever. Allie, I was wondering how to determine an MIA during laning phase. I want to ping for MIAs as much as I can, but I don't want to make it to the point where it gets annoying. So when do I ping a Mia, basically, I think.
Okay. Well, go ahead, Doom.
Okay. Mias are a gift. They are not a requirement.
Missing in actions, by the way.
Yeah, missing in action. So if you can ping that someone's missing, great. If you're on top of that, like I being jungle a lot, if I see someone out of lane, I'll ping it a lot of times. Or even if I see one of my teammates ping it, I'll re-ping it just to make sure that that point is across, that, hey, they may be coming to another lane, watch out. But at the same time, if someone roams to your lane and a Mia wasn't called, that's your fault because you weren't watching the map, period. Don't blame it on your team. Don't get mad that, oh, no SS, no MIA, you know, what the heck, this bad mid lane or whatever. No, that's your fault. Watch the map. Keep looking at the map. And if you don't get this point, just every few seconds, look at the mini map. Like one thing I always like to say to people if they're laning, if you're laning, when you get a last hit, look at the map. Every time you get a last hit, look at the map. Or if you're jungling, every time you use an ability, look at the map. Or every time every few auto attacks on a camp, look at the map. If you're moving between camps, look at the map. You have to look at the map. That is one of your biggest sources of information. So, period. Look at the map.
Like, going back to actually calling Mia's, a general rule, like, if you see the enemy laner, he has less than, like, let's say 20% HP, chances are he's not going to be leaving a lane to go gank. You don't have to worry about it as much then. Anytime other than that. Yeah, like it's say like you're in any other lane.
Like Asderition and I are about to go on a rant.
Well, I'm about to, yeah.
Yeah, well, because we both play mid lane and we both play mages against assassins, and like this is a fact of life for us.
It's huge. Like I mean, I totally agree with Haber and Doom. I agree that you guys say that it is a privilege, but in the grand end scheme of things, I am your teammate. While it's not necessarily my job to make sure that you're paying attention to the map, it's my job to help you. And part of that is calling missings. Like,
so I was getting back to saying when you should ping, you dick.
Sorry.
God. Anyways, like it takes between lane, it takes about 15, 20, 25 seconds if you don't have your boots normally to get between lanes through the river. So you have around like 10 to 15 seconds at most to call your Mia if you don't see them in that time, to give the rest of your team like good warning.
The good rule of thumb here is better safe than sorry.
Yeah.
Because that sounds like the main question you're asking. I
concluded this email saying, it doesn't matter if they get upset. You're giving them information. If they don't like it, tough titties.
And for those of you that are annoyed by constant pings, if you want to be that
there's
person,
constant pings, and then because they do get annoying.
Like if you're the type of person,
like you're doing like a ping every like 2 pings and then you stop, and then another 2 pings later on. Yeah, that's not annoying.
If you're the type of person that just like really, really can't stand the ping sounds or whatever, it just doesn't like it, you turn it down. Don't bitch at your teammate because he keeps pinging. Like, you have the ability to turn down the ping. There's no reason for you to get mad at your teammate for pinging too much. Like, he's trying to help you for the most part. Like, obviously there are those few trolls that just spam ping, but even for those people, like, why wouldn't you I automatically just like, oh, this guy's a ping spammer, I'm just going to turn you down. Why am I going to yell at him? That's what he wants me to do. Like, I'm not going to fuel that troll. Don't get mad at your teammates for pinging, especially excessive pinging, when you can turn it down yourself. That is just the most ludicrous excuse I've ever heard to bitch at somebody. Absolutely crazy.
Pings are so huge, and
they're
especially
critical.
in mid lane. It's like it's your defense tool against enemies roaming, and it's incredibly important. Like I can't always go follow the assassin like out into the open. Like he's just gonna kill me. But if I try and give you as much heads up as possible, I can try and prevent that double kill that's gonna snowball the game. So please, like I'm just trying to give you a heads up. If he's just pushing the wave and then he happens to come back to lane 5 seconds later, it's no harm, no foul. Really, you saw a ping show up on your chat. But if I don't ping and then he shows up in bot, like I'm
gonna get crucified.
Exactly.
It's ridiculous.
Well, React. The thing is too, reacts to pings, and make sure they're legitimate, but react to pings. If you're bottom and you see a mid call an MIA, back off a little bit, because even if you lose a little bit of your lane pressure or anything like that, guess what? That mid who just roamed out probably lost 1 or 2 CS if he starts roaming down and then realizes, oh crap, they know I'm coming, and goes back to lane. He just lost a couple CS, so you guys just gained an advantage.
Yeah,
so,
he's also de-incentivized to go down there again because your mid laner's calling ping. So he's going to be like, well, if I leave lane, he's just going to know, so I'm not even going to bother. So then you're free. Like, oh, you react to a ping, they react to you reacting to a ping, and they no longer bother you because you're actually playing smart.
It's all about communication, and honestly,
Totally
it's better safe than sorry. Just use pings whenever you have a hunch that they might be missing, and if they happen to come back to lane shortly after, it's not the end of the world. But if every time that you do have that one ping that gets one of your side lanes to slightly back off, like, that could be a game changer. You could be pressuring their turret because that roam didn't work out. You can do so many amazing things, like, if in the off chance that, like, that is a deciding factor. So, like, I am all about, like, when in doubt, use the ping. Like, it's worth it.
Totally is.
Yeah.
And on the way pings are amazing. Like, I love those pings.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I always use them because as a jungler, if you're gonna gank, you should almost always do an all on the way ping when you're coming to gank, so that your teammate knows, hey, I'm coming. I'm either going to relieve pressure, or I'm going to watch this lane for you, or hey, I'm coming. Let's kill this guy. So
and ping the person you want to kill too. As junglers, like, on the way, and then ping, especially for the bot lane, ping what you want to go for. I can't tell you how many times I'll go for someone and the jungle will be on someone else and be like, buddy, I had no idea who you wanted to go for. Like, I went for the closest target. I'm sorry I didn't get into a better position, but next time, let me know.
When we go into specific lane tips and tricks,
Yeah.
Especially if you're playing an aggressive mid laner, I often use this to my advantage and try and, like, cause chaos for the enemy mid laner by, like, slightly disappearing and then, like, surprise, I was here the whole time. Like, a lot of these little things you can, like, taking advantage of Mia's are really a nice tactic, and I don't want to go into that, but from the defensive side, like, I don't want to, like, spam my team with communication. It's better safe than sorry. I'm almost never gonna say, like, why did you ping there? That was a terrible idea.
Yeah. My last little bit about pings for you newer players: learn how to use the ping wheel. It's amazing. Like, I don't even know what each one is anymore. Like, I know up is the super alert one, and I know right is the missing, and I think bottom is on the way. I guess I do know him, but anyway, like, when you really
bottom
think
is assist me.
Bottom's assist me.
so I didn't know him, but, like, in the middle of it all, like, I will know. Like, I will know exactly what I need to ping. Being able to ping ridiculously quick and just eloquently and hastily, you'll find that you're gonna get your information, your communication across a lot faster than typing or subtle pings, just like a G ping every now and then.
And I think we'll break this down in more detail when we get into the
definitely.
SUPERSODE that's coming up.
But anyway,
SUPERSODE.
I think that wraps up our episode for today. So thank you guys for joining in. Remember, SUPERSODE next episode. We're super excited because SUPERSODE. Thank you for joining us tonight. And yeah, have a good night.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thank
See
you.
ya.
Thanks for listening to the Four Wards podcast, part of the Trinity Force Network. If you'd like to leave feedback or questions for the crew, you can reach us at fourwards@trinityforcepodcast.com. If you'd like an easy way to download the podcast, you can visit us at fourwards.trinityforcepodcast.com. You can also reach us on Twitter at fourwardspodcast with the number 4. If you want to listen to all the other great T-Force Network podcasts, you can find them at www.trinityforcepodcast.com. Thanks for listening to the Four Wards podcast. We'll be back next time with more ways to help you move forward in League.